Okay, welcome everyone to the August 24th, 2021 Truckee Town Council meeting. It is great to see so many people here, a real live audience. All right, may we have roll call, please?
Yes, Councilmember Romack? Here. Councilmember Pallavi? I'll note him as absent. Sorry, I didn't look up. Councilmember Zabriskie?
Here.
Vice Mayor Henderson? Here. And Mayor Klostad?
Here.
Thank you.
Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, agenda item 4 is public comment. Do we have anybody here to make general public comment on anything not on this evening's agenda? Thinking, and no, it does not look like it. So that tells me that most people are here to enjoy the presentation or one of the presentations, but most likely the one to Perry Norris in recognition for his service. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in on that one. So this is item 5.1. Town of Truckee proclamation. Well, actually, maybe we should have Perry come and stand with us.
I'll just remind council, the last time I was here, you made a pledge for $500,000 to the Bright property, so are we on a roll here?
We should have known you would not be in full retirement yet.
I have one more week, so. All
right, are you ready?
Of
course. Town of Truckee proclamation. Whereas Perry Norris is here retiring from Truckee Donner Land Trust, and whereas he has made significant contribution to the Truckee community in the 25 years of service he has provided to the Land Trust, and whereas Perry has been the executive director throughout the lion's share of the 40,000 acres the Land Trust has protected, with notable projects including Waddell Ranch, Royal Gorge, Weber Lake, Lower Carpenter Valley, Frog Lake, and Truckee Springs. And whereas he is known for his can-do attitude that drove the Land Trust to accomplish massive deals with respect to the size of the organization, often working with landowners for more than a decade before a deal comes to fruition. And whereas Perry grew the Land Trust from a mostly volunteer organization to what it is today, not only protecting open space, but also managing 45 miles of trail, a campground at Weber Lake, new backcountry huts at Frog Lake, along with stewardship duties, caring for the protected lands. And whereas the Truckee community will gratefully enjoy the fruits of Perry's labors for generations to come. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee, recognition of Perry Norris for his contributions to the community, expresses gratitude for his accomplishments, and wishes him the best for his new phase of life, done this 24th day of August, 2021.
Yeah, you can't see how I'm.
Yeah. I know. A little sneak peek.
So, thank you very, very much. And I'd like to express my gratitude to the great board that has been unbelievably supportive over decades. And I have to thank my staff. And, you know, it was pretty easy when you work with such great people like John Swan, who's will be taking the helm on next Tuesday. And I'd like to thank my family, my son Lewis is here, and of course my wife Shauna. So thanks very much. I'm deeply grateful for this.
Thank you, Perry. I don't believe you're going to get off that easy, though. I'm quite certain there's a few people that would like to make some comments, so you might want to stay up there. And I'll start with council, if anybody has anything to say, and then I know that we've got a few people in the audience that would like to speak too. Any comments?
I will just jump in and say, Perry, thank you so much for your service to our community. You've always been a pleasure to work with in whatever way we're working together. So thank you for your dedication, and Truckee's a better place because of you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed a lot of the Donner Land Trust land over the years, and I'm very grateful personally, as my family is as well, and I appreciate the fact that your organization has become a model for others to realize how much can be accomplished and for them to set higher goals in their own efforts to preserve natural lands. So thank you.
And I would just like to say what an honor and pleasure it was to work with you on Truckee Springs. That was the one time that I worked side by side with you to accomplish one of these goals. And let me tell you, everybody, it is addictive. It is so exciting to see that accomplishment and to work with such an incredible team. The creativity, the enthusiasm, the drive, it was very inspirational. So I will be back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Perry, it's an absolute honor to know you. I am so grateful for all of your efforts for our entire community. Like Councilmember Zabriskie, I've also enjoyed a lot of the open space that you've worked so hard to protect. My family was just up at Weber Lake camping. My 4-year-old still talks about it a couple weeks later, about the amazing lake and how much fun he had. And it's true that we have generations to come that are going to be able to enjoy all of the fruits of the work that you've done. So thank you so much.
It's gratifying to hear. Thank you.
Mr. Owens, are you standing for a reason?
An open microphone?
Yes.
3 minutes, right?
Yes.
Perry, don't go far. I'm really deeply honored to be here and be able to say some words, Mayor, about Perry and to Perry. I've known him a long time, but I really got to start working with him when I was county supervisor and on several projects. And I've always appreciated his driving force, his ability to make things happen, and his small orders. You know, like he called me one day and he said, hey, you know, the Truckee River Canyon acquisitions, which were fairly large, old railroad land, maps dating back to the 1860s, and we're having trouble with the maps, so we kind of need to get that all squared away and all melded into one deal and everything like that. And I said, well, I'll see what we can do. When do you need this by? He goes, 6 weeks. And I was, well, nevertheless, with his powerful argumentation and drive, it was made to be. I appreciated working on other projects. I enjoyed working with Perry so much. I've really been honored to be on the board for the past, 9 years? I think 9, 10, I don't know. But it's been really wonderful. And one thing about Perry is I've not met many human beings in my entire life that have such a drive, such vision, and not a desire to get from one place to another and make a project happen, but the true and honest belief that it will happen, and then making it happen. His ability to bring people together in common fights for open space and the ability to leave something behind to our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren we'll never know. You did a great job of attacking the checkerboard, Perry, and we're all really grateful for that. So I'm sad to see you go, and I know you won't go far. I'll see you regularly, I'm sure. But I wanted to say one really important thing. John Svan, while you have big shoes to fill, I know you will do a wonderful job because you've had the benefit of being tutored by the master. So congratulations, Perry.
Madam Mayor, members of the Town Council, and Mr. Norris. I have to say, after 25 years of working with Perry, it's been an honor and a pleasure. We've been partners in crime. We've been occasional backroom schemers. We've been public policy advocates. It is one of the things that really sticks with me is that every time we've worked with the Truckee Donner Land Trust, the honesty, the integrity, the sense of innovation they bring to projects, and the can-do attitude has been inspiring. Perry is leaving this town much richer than he found it for his children and for the future generations, and I know nothing could be more important to him than that. So it's been an honor to work with Perry, and thank you for your service to our community.
Supervisor Bullock?
Mayor Questad and honorable council members, thank you so much for honoring Perry. I was trying to think today, I think it's been 30 years or so, and so many great times, lifetime of memories, and I watched Perry from the very start. Totally inspirational. The one thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this, absolute mission, laser focused on keeping that mission. And if you've worked with the Land Trust staff, everybody's aligned on that mission. I know John worked a lot with John and Perry both, but just really having an organization so centric on providing for the people of Truckee and Tahoe and the surrounding region open space and places for us to recreate and preserve. Everybody was aligned on that mission. We have all these shiny objects we work with every day trying to parse it out, but Perry stayed true to that mission. I just think it's so commendable, and I want to thank you for everything you've done for our community and the partnership with the county, and I look forward to other things in the future. And definitely, I'd also mention all the staff members. Whenever you work with somebody from the Land Trust, you can guarantee that you're going to get a phone call that's concise, quick, to the point. What are we doing? How are we going to get there? And it's always focused around getting something done. So congratulations, job well done, and thanks for your service.
Mayor and Council, my name is Jeff Brown. I am a long-time board member of the Truckee Donner Land Trust, thanks to Perry. I want to thank you for recognizing what a monumental event this is and for taking the appropriate steps to honor such a storied career. Many, many years ago, Perry and I were working on a real estate transaction, and he gave me the great honor of coming to work with the organization, and exactly along the lines of what Hardy said, he sold me on this concept of conservation through capitalism, and the concept of willing buyers and willing sellers, and I just so admire the integrity with which he has managed these deals and led this organization, and it has truly been an inspiration and a great pleasure to work with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
The roast is on. I'm just kidding. Mayor and Council, my name is John Swan. I used to work for Perry. We're co-directors now, and I will hopefully carry on his proud tradition moving forward. I was thinking about what to say, and I think the best way to say it is, and I'm sure Lou and Shauna, you know all about this, and Jenny, but when you go skiing with Perry, you do this. When you get to a ridge, you just do this. Hey, let's name all the land trust projects you can see from here, right? And there's a lot. And Perry's, I'm sure you're fairly uncomfortable standing here listening to all this. But honestly, those projects wouldn't have happened without him. And we're all owe him a debt of gratitude.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, really, if we could all have even 1/10 of his legacy of leaving this world a better place, the world would be changed significantly. So, Perry, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. And it's a pleasure to have you all here. Stick around. It's an exciting event. Especially this next one, 5.2, Emergency Coordinator Update. Mr. Womack, what do you have for us? Which emergency are we talking about tonight?
I believe it's the plethora of emergencies.
Do we get to cover all of them?
Well, unfortunately, to cover some of them, which that's why I started with a little bit of lightheartedness on a slide, with an idea that, hey, it's not all bad. So unfortunately, there is some negativity, but we're going to try and keep it as positive as possible.
The community does get to see that slide, right? I just want to make sure, because
They
that's
should,
brilliant.
They should.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're going to kind of talk about wildfires, PSOM, PSPS, COVID, and council priorities. I'd love to say that everything fits in these circles and bubbles nicely. To some extent, we make it fit. So wildfires, a quick update. I think most people are following these kind. The Caldor Highway 50, as of this morning, 117,000 acres. About 9% contained, although there is fire line around a lot of the heels, so that number will move dramatically, I'm sure. 2,100 firefighters currently assigned and about 33,000 people evacuated. Obviously a major fire for us. Unfortunately, the fire activity is expected to uptick this week with the southwest winds, which will blow the smoke towards us. It is the #1 priority fire in the U.S. at this point. That means we're getting all the major resources for it. In addition, they've assigned a National Incident Management Team, NEMO, which is the really big ones for the worst of the worst hurricane type things. So somebody thinks that there's value in our area. I'm kind of happy to hear that. Unfortunately, it's burning in deep drainages and a lot of timber, so we're going to see lots of smoke. That makes it much more difficult to fight. We can expect smoke for at least the next week is the forecast. Smoke forecasts are very difficult and notoriously inaccurate, so, with a grain of salt. If you watched TV yesterday, you saw a statement by the CAL FIRE director that, it's knocking on the door of the Tahoe Basin. While that may be true, it is really unlikely that it'll make it that far given the resources they're putting into it. Not impossible, and unfortunately we have seen with the next fire, it's the first time ever that a fire started on the west slope, burned all the way over into the east slope of the Sierras. So we no longer say it can't happen, but obviously they're throwing lots at it. Dixie Fire, which is of course Lake Ominor area, it still has a lot of active fire areas, mainly on the south sides. Unfortunately, that's where Taylorsville, Janesville, and Milford are. Structure protections in place, and they are ready if that fire advances in that direction. You're seeing a theme here again, big timber, down and dead. Hard to fight in that kind of stuff, hard to cut dozer line in that, and it creates lots of smoke and very explosive fire behavior when the trees actually ignite. And unfortunately, there's still 3 other large fires burning in Northern California, over 100,000 acres, with many smaller ones. So our resources are very much stretched thin. Across the West, really Montana is the other place that has a lot of fire activity right now. So that's good. It's bad that we have fires. It's good that they're only in really 2 states. So there are resources still. Swinging over to...
But it is only August.
It is only August. Swinging over to COVID, I am going to confirm, this is what is on their website, there was only 1 new case reported overnight in the county. I have emailed the public health staff and have not got a response, but that is what's on their website. So that is beyond significantly less. Prior to that, we were averaging 49.1 cases per 100,000, 6th worst county in the state. So hopefully that trend continues, because you can see we're fairly close to where we saw the December, January peak there with that right-hand column. Testing positivity has been about 12%, so that is obviously much higher. 591 tests in a day, so we're still testing a lot of people. So those are numbers that say that is a representative and an accurate number. TFH, as of this morning, 3 positive tests overnight. Of course, that's both Placer, Nevada. Really, they also report for Incline. So that may explain the difference, because there were no cases overnight on the county. And they still had 5 inpatients as of this morning. So it is affecting people at a rate that's getting them into the hospital, unfortunately. Swinging to PSOM, public safety power shutoffs. We are using the term PSOM to differentiate, which is public safety outage management. That's what the state of Nevada calls it. And since this is MV Energy's, that's what we settled on. They have updated their timeline. They're using the term watches, which is kind of the planning phase when they see that their weather concerns are aligning with Reno National Weather Service. And then warnings are usually going to be at about 48 hours, and that's where they will step up into what they consider likely that it's going to occur. And that would be the point at which they're telling people, you need to take action, whatever action your plan is for there. We're obviously working with PUD, Liberty, the airport, Todd and our HOA to set up community resource locations. That's a work in progress. They will provide at the CRCs the ability to charge a device. We'll provide information directly, hopefully from the PUD or Liberty, and then basic water so that people have something for them while they're there. These are not 24-hour shelters. They're not designed to be 24-hour shelters. As you note in the next little bullet point there, American Red Cross, FEMA, and Cal OES do not see PSPSs or PSOMs as emergency or disasters. And because of that, American Red Cross will not open shelters for this, so we would have to figure that out. We certainly don't have the ability as a town, and the county looks at this and says, that's just a little bit over the top of what we're going to be able to do. Plus, their experience on the west side in the last couple of years is nobody really uses them. So it's not, the benefit is not there. We're working with Tahoe Forest, Nevada County Public Health to address medical needs for people that have durable medical equipment. It's one of those things, and I often kind of forget all the different things. It's easy to think about oxygen concentrators. It's not so easy to remember people on CPAPs have an issue there too. So really when it comes down to it is none of us as a single entity can meet all of those needs. And so we're trying to put something in place. Every time we come up with an idea, there's a lot of other issues that come with it. But really this comes down to folks that are in that position need to be thinking about how best to, when this happens, care for themselves. We're trying to avoid the 911 calls in the middle of the night. Obviously, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes, but we don't have the resources to deal with that either locally. We're also working with Cambridge, Truckee Donner Senior Apartments to try and get the generator for the day use room. It's actually 2 steps in there. The first is they have a temporary one that will power part of that room currently, and we're making sure that that's going to work, or they are. We're also sent a letter in support of them being able to get a generator that would power that whole day use building, including the Meals on Wheels. And I've been told they have the money set aside from whichever federal agency they work with. So it's just a matter of getting it all together at this point. And then we will be doing a community town hall on September 8th at 6 o'clock. It'll be by Zoom, and we'll be taking care of trying to answer people's questions and, again, getting them prepared. This looks like, based upon what we're seeing, it would be a late October, early November kind of event. If you remember back, we had a red flag warning about a week ago now. Quite honestly, I looked at that and I thought they're definitely going to have a PSOM here. It's exactly the alignment that we had talked about as being an issue. And when I talked to them yesterday in Nevada Energy, they said they weren't even close to calling a PSOM for us. So fingers crossed that this is not something that, I know they're not taking it lightly. And then just a quick thing on council priorities. I've worked with American Red Cross, both on Beckworth and Dixie for sheltering, planning shelters. American Red Cross had flown in a team from out of the area, so they were staying at the Vets Hall. We had to get them all set up. We've been working with community groups on a variety of different projects and presentations and planning. We're working with some different groups about traffic modeling. We actually found a local group that I was put in touch with. I say a group, it's two guys that grew up in Nevada County, wound up at UC Berkeley, and they're doing looks like some really good work. So hopefully we'll be back to you in a couple of weeks to show you that. And that's really modeling both time to evacuate, and also they're working on separation distance. So kind of something we've talked about, but what does it look like when we are able to do defensible space, both on houses, single parcel properties, and then also across the roadway edges. And then another positive, unfortunately, comes out of something negative, but Zone Haven received several compliments. Both the river fire in Nevada County, and that particular picture there is the Dixie Fire, Plymouth and Lassen. And they basically stood up Zone Haven in a matter of a couple of weeks to use it for those fires. Unfortunately, they had used it for Beckworth, so they kind of had the model already. But it worked really well. It was much easier to understand, and that's what we heard also out of the river fire. Nevada County OS heard that loud and clear, that coupled with their notifications, there were certainly traffic issues, but the notifications to evacuate came out well. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Bob. That's a lot. Just sticking on this one, I do have a quick question, and then we'll see if other councils have them. So in the winter, when we've got a really bad snowstorm, I know we have the ability, or I just learned this year that we have the ability to put information on apps like Waze to say, don't try to exit on Moraine when you're driving down Donner Pass Road, because Donner Pass Road is closed, right? Is there an opportunity to do something similar in circumstances of fire evacuations?
Yes, there's a couple of things that happen there. Nixle itself will push out to Waze and to Google, depending on the level we select, and so that messaging automatically goes into those apps to show routes. It is very difficult to close off routes. Over the years, we've tried a couple of different things because it's really built upon user interface and users not moving. So we run into a little bit of that, but yes, we have worked with both of them to try and get the ability to put information in. And I know that's something that Drew Jack has worked on extensively with both of those partners to try and get them to take our information so that we can better direct traffic and, like you said, not have it wind up in subdivisions where it isn't going anywhere anyways.
Right. Well, subdivisions and other areas. I mean, I helped a camper back out of a dirt road on the other side of the pond in Coldstream because Waze said they could get through. And that would be really bad in a fire evacuation situation. So, okay. Other council members, do you have any questions on other items that Bob covered?
Bob, could you explain on was it CRC that provides the charging stations and that sort of thing? Are they providing tables and chairs, places to sit down, and are they also providing any beds?
We're not providing any beds because we're not a shelter and we can't.
Okay.
There's some real strict requirements there once we get into that realm. Yes, chairs and tables are the goal right now. We do also have a plan if COVID continues or rears its ugly head worse as to how we could do pop-ups and possibly just basically at that point, other than durable medical equipment, we're handing out small batteries that could charge personal cellular devices. Basically a drive-through. So that model was used last year on the west side. It worked. But generally speaking, yes, tables and chairs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Bob, thanks so much for covering all 4 of these fun items. So, Jen, town manager report, what do you have for us?
Just a couple of things. I'm going to start with something exciting and a little sneak peek to please save the date for anybody watching. We're going to be hosting a open house with Placer County on October 1st, the afternoon, and it's a Truckee North Tahoe ribbon cutting fest for some of our housing projects that are coming online. There'll be over 270 new affordable and achievable housing units that are going to be opening up in our region. So the town is working with Placer County. It's going to be a fun event. We're planning for it to be a zero waste event. We're going to use our transit service to do the tour since they are supported with all of these housing units. Also have food trucks, community groups, group booths, and speakers. So save the date, more information to come. It'll start downtown across from the Artist Lofts and will end there as well. So we're excited about that. If there's any questions, you can contact Shauna. She's working to coordinate that. And we'll be sending out official save the dates on September 1st. Also, just continued reminders to get vaccinated. If you're not, you can still do so at myturn.com to schedule an appointment or get information. And also, please be careful out there with the smoke and watch the air quality. Stay inside if you at all can. Thank you.
Oh, that was short.
Short.
That's very exciting, the open house. I love that we're doing that with Placer County. That's great. Any questions from anybody? All right, thank you so much. So, consent calendar. We have a few items. Oh, thank you. It's been a while. Do we have any public comment on the presentations?
I thought we were doing just public comment in person. I don't have any here.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. All right, so consent agenda. Let's see, 6.1, approve minutes from the August 10th, 2021 regular meeting. 6.2, increase in DocuSign contract amount and budget amendment. 6.3, authorize the purchase of Office 365 licenses through E+. 6.4, approval of permanent local housing allocation, non-entitlement local government component funding application. Whew. 6.5, authorization to apply for Northern Sierra Air Quality Management District, AB 2666 program grant funding for the renewable diesel fuel tank project. And 6.6, the 2021 aerial mapping, C-1906 contract amendment. Do we have any council members wishing to pull any items? Any staff? Any public? Seeing none. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda?
Mayor Klostov, just to be sure, you do have item 6.7 for the construction contract award for Church Street on your draft?
I do not. I
Okay.
was wondering where that was.
Should be on your agenda, but that's part of the consent calendar.
Okay, if you want to just read that so that our public knows what that is.
Construction contract award for the Church Street Extension Trout Creek Restoration Project, CIPC 1804.
Thank you. Okay. Any public comment on any of the consent agenda items? Okay.
No.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve consent calendar.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So we are unanimous. Thank you very much for making sure we approve that one. I would like to just comment that it is very rare for us to get award a project that is under the engineer's estimate, and I am very excited to have that project move forward. That's going to be a huge improvement to our community and the circulation. You're good. Thanks. Okay, item 7.1. Memorandum of Understanding with local agencies for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. I think, Jen, you were going to kick this off, and we also have Steve Frisch here.
Yes, thank you. And really, Mayor, credit goes to you for this. You've really spearheaded this and championed this for the town, so thank you for that. Mr. Frisch is here. He can answer further details, as I'm sure you can as well, if there's more questions. But really, this is a framework to put together a collaboration or a coalition of partners interested in exploring various GHG reduction projects in the area. There's 3 initial partners. The scope of work includes the opportunity for additional partners to come in under a different memorandum, identifying who those stakeholders would be, setting out the framework for the collaboration or the organization, the purpose, what the metrics are that you'll measure success against, and how to move that forward. And if you would like to add anything else to that, please do so. And thank you again for your efforts in this.
This has been an absolute dream for me to work on. So I want to thank Steve Frisch and my other partners in crime, David Diamond, Vice President of the Airport Board, and Krista Finn, President of the Truckee Donner Public Utility District. I really hope that we have the opportunity to move forward on this. We have unanimous support from the other 2 boards, both the airport and the PUD, and I think everybody's pretty excited to see what the opportunities are that we could create out of this. So Steve, if you'd like to add anything. And of course, we're thrilled to be working with Sierra Business Council and Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation.
Steve Frisch with the Sierra Business Council. So I don't really have that much to add other than that we're thrilled to be working with these 3 agencies on exploring the opportunities for long-term greenhouse gas emission reductions and climate adaptation in the region. We're relatively confident that we'll have a product coming out of this in less than the 12-month term of the Memorandum of Understanding that includes a strategic plan for how to move that effort forward and begin exploring the many projects that could come out of this, which we think are really exciting. The only thing I would add to that is that one of the main benefits of this project, I think, is looking at kind of aligning regional local government entities on projects that could qualify for state and federal funding as those funding sources are developing. There's a $3.7 billion inclusion in this year's budget for climate adaptation, which is being kind of negotiated in the legislature right now, but it's already in the budget. And of course, climate is a major part of the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation bill that is being advanced right now too. So we're hoping this will line the town and the special districts in the region up for project funding for things that could be developed out of those funding sources. But thank you so much for the opportunity to work with the town on this, and thank you for your effort on this, Mayor Klovstad. It's been a pleasure working with you guys, and I'm able to answer questions if you'd like.
Thank you so much, Steve. And I'll just add one more thing. When we say project, I want to be clear that we are including in that not just what we traditionally look at as for projects, something built or changed or developed. We're also looking at programs, procurement, policies, practices. So just the whole host of what a project might be that will have some sort of positive effect on reducing our greenhouse gas emissions for the region. So are there any, kind of weird to be asking for questions when I'm talking about it, but I think that's the end of the presentation, so we can go to questions, right? Okay. Are there any questions from council?
I have just a couple. Steve, you mentioned a climate adaptation. Is it legislation, draft legislation, or?
Yeah, in this year's state budget that was approved in June, there's an earmark in the budget for $3.7 billion for climate adaptation programs, which also includes programmatic funding for regional climate planning work. Now, what happened when they passed the budget is they included the language for a climate adaptation package and the funding, but they didn't define the package yet. So they're working on that in this next 2 weeks before the legislative session ends, and that will be approved by September 10th.
Can this funding be used for greenhouse gas emission reductions, or are they talking about adaptation in the strict sense?
So so remember, nothing's approved yet.
Yes.
So the proposals that are on the table include 3 years of funding, $3.7 billion. First year, $440 million, focused almost exclusively on regional planning. So that's money that would be available to local governments, climate collaboratives, regional governance entities across the state to look at long-term climate adaptation planning. And then would also include in that first $440 million a substantial amount of funding to deal with extreme heat events in California and begin planning for extreme heat events. Subsequent years of funding also include regional planning funding, but also include programmatic funding for things like vehicle charging stations, community resilience centers like we're talking about for PSOM events and things like that, and a wide variety of kind of investments that could be made in local communities to plan for climate adaptation.
So does that include greenhouse gas reduction measures, working on that, or is it only about
Yes,
how?
yeah,
Okay,
so
all right.
it would include working on planning regionally for reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay. My only other question is, do you know who you'll have working on this coalition project?
So the initial partners on the memorandum of understanding are the Truckee-Donner Public Utility District and the Tahoe-Truckee Airport District. At the end of the initial planning phase, we'll have a new memorandum of understanding, and it is anticipated that that will open kind of participation to all other agencies or community organizations that wish to join.
Are you able to tell us who from SBC will be working on it?
Yes, it will be myself, our climate and energy director, Sherry Howe, and our greenhouse gas emission analyst, Justine Quealy.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have any public comment?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Okay, back to us for deliberation. I think you guys know where I stand.
Well, I'm incredibly excited to see this come to fruition. I know that you and many others, Mayor Klofstad, have been working on this for months and months. It's been a tremendous lift. So thank you, for all of your work. Steve, thank you so much for being here this evening and for all of the work that your team is doing. And to the special districts that are willing to partner. I think that this aligns really, really well with the goals that have been set forth for our council over the next 2 years. And I'm also really excited to see this partnership and collaboration opportunity with the other special districts, because it just gives us the opportunity to try to advance and leverage those partnerships for greater impact for the good of our community around reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So thank you for your work on this, and I'm very excited to support it.
Thank you.
I agree with Courtney.
As do I.
All right, can I have a motion then?
I will make a motion that we authorize the town manager to enter into a contract with local regional partners to facilitate a greenhouse gas emission reduction coalition, and also approve an amendment to the fiscal year 21-22 town council professional services budget to increase the budget by $17,000 and utilize the sustainability designation to fund this increase.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have unanimous support. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Steve, for coming. I appreciate you being here. Those were good answers that I didn't have, so. Okay. Item 7.2, Outdoor Recreation Advocacy Contract Award and Budget Amendment. So Hillary, you taking us through this one?
I am taking you through this one. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Excited to present this opportunity for increasing our advocacy specifically around outdoor recreation. So I'll walk you through how we got to where we are, what we're proposing. And I also want to mention we have Katie Hawkins from Alpine Inspired here tonight as well. Just wanted the chance to introduce council to her. If you don't know her already, she is local here in Truckee, so she may be a familiar face. And also she's here to help answer any questions you may have. As we all have experienced over the past 18 months, we've seen significant increase in interest in outdoor recreation, both locally as well as from visitors from outside the area, which has led to crowding and use impacts, as well as heightened community interest in addressing these issues in our community. Over the past several months, starting last winter, we've really worked closely with a number of local partners on a collaborative response to many of these issues. Really with planning and mitigation efforts. And a sampling of some of those efforts are listed here, which have included our Trailhead Ambassadors Program, Clean Tahoe Litter Mitigation Contract, the Champion, Catalyze, and Convene, or CCC meetings that Hardy Bullock has organized to discuss at a regional level some of the issues with high visitation that we've experienced, as well as a Sustainable Truckee Outdoor Recreation Collaborative effort, which has been an effort of 5 funding partners in Truckee, organized by Visit Truckee Tahoe to collaboratively work on our immediate response for some of our peak season visitation issues this summer. And that's been a great effort that has led to initial start of thinking about what do we do long term, what are some of the things that we can do to enhance our outdoor recreation as well as address sort of long term impacts of visitation moving forward. At the same time, we're experiencing unprecedented opportunities with both state and federal funding across the board in various sectors, but many of which align with outdoor recreation. So this is an opportunity that we see for us to get our ducks in a row and really be ready to respond to these new funding sources that are available or soon to be available for these types of projects. So the scope of work that we are proposing with Alpine Inspired is to work on outdoor recreation advocacy, and there's sort of 3 main buckets of what that scope includes. The first is developing a regional priority list, and some of that work has already started under the Sustainable Truckee Outdoor Recreation Collaborative. There's really working to refine that list, coming up with criteria to prioritize those projects, and then next step would be keeping an eye out, vetting these new funding opportunities of how we can move the needle on some of these long-term regional priorities. And then the last piece, which is the sort of most significant piece here, and something that is really a new is a change from the STORC, or Sustainable Truckee Outdoor Recreation Collaborative work that has already started, is really working on advocacy of how can we work with local, state, federal agencies and electeds to help access some of those funding opportunities. And that's really the work that Alpine Inspired has an expertise in. They're really focused on outdoor recreation advocacy and have excellent track record at that type of work. The last thing I wanted to address is alignment with town council goals and our work plan. Although outdoor recreation is not specifically identified as one of our council goals, many of the projects that we have within our work plan under those goals fall under our greenhouse gas reduction goal as well as our infrastructure goal. So we do see some alignment there with many of the items on our work plan, and just a sampling of those items are listed here. So with that, our recommendations tonight are to authorize the town manager to enter into a contract with Alpine Inspired in the amount of $24,044.50 for outdoor recreation advocacy, and to approve a budget amendment to fund that through the sustainability designation, and that's in the amount of $24,044.50. That our recreation or our advocacy work is all funded out of the council professional services budget, so it would sort of live under there, but we are recommending this fund source, but could discuss that if council wishes. With that, open to any questions for both myself as well as Katie.
Thank you so much, Hillary. Do we have questions from council?
I have two quick questions. First question, Hillary, have you and Jen discussed switching masks? I'm just staring at the polka dots.
Yeah.
Okay, now serious question.
I did think about stealing her mask earlier
I was like,
today.
oh, that would be perfect. It's both polka dots for those that can't see them. Second question was, you mentioned, the unprecedented funding available, and the contract currently would run through April 15th. Do you foresee us missing any opportunities on funding, that would be available before April 15th, or is this an appropriate timeline where you think we'd still be able to access a lot of this at that time?
I'll let Katie jump in if she would like to on this one as well, but throughout the scope of work, we sort of have it presented in a linear fashion, but I anticipate that, Katie has an eye on all these different funding sources, so if there's something that has a deadline before that, that's something that we could certainly consider if it seems like it aligns with the projects we're discussing. Anything to add?
So first, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, and then all the town staff for your leadership and support. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you, so thank you. To answer your question, yeah, we'll be tracking the priority list, and the thing is, there are going to be new funding opportunities, but we have these proposals and the deliverables in place so that we can just continue to track them, and especially with our other cross-jurisdiction partners and local partners like Sierra Business Council, we have a collaborative group, focused on these opportunities. So I feel that we'll be able to, have eyes on the prize for sure.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Did you want to go ahead, Councilmember Zabriskie?
What do we mean by enhance outdoor recreation?
I can take that if you'd like.
Sure.
Or whatever. Go ahead. Councilmember, enhance outdoor recreation opportunities. And there were some great questions that came over from council that I addressed earlier yesterday. It's really attending to the quality of the experience for folks. And we have a large deferred maintenance on our public lands and areas of outdoor recreation. So this could be bringing up a bathroom facilities. I worked with the Parks and Recs on the Donner Lake ramp and upgrading that facility to be ADA. There are certain things to enhance and make outdoor recreation more accessible and equitable within our region.
Okay, so it's not directed at directly increasing outdoor recreation.
Well, it depends on what the opportunity or the project might be. I mean, there could be things like fuel reduction projects that enhance outdoor recreation experiences here, working with the Forest Service. So it is really case by case.
Yeah, no, I meant in terms of, is this intended to increase tourist or resident use of our natural lands?
It is what it enhance and how I've used it with my colleagues and partners is it is to enhance the experience for the community and visitors to our region.
So not directly directed at attracting more people?
We're not a marketing firm. We're not out there. We're there to give people a safe and equitable experience in the outdoor recreation landscapes within our region.
Could it include building more trails or roads?
There is opportunities for that, but again, it depends on the funding source and what is available. And that is why we proposed a stakeholder group, a key stakeholder, to vet this and have a real collaborative discussions around where we prioritize our energy.
What do we mean by advocate? Who are we advocating to, and what is it we're advocating?
Well, when I think it's really elevating these opportunities right now. As you could see, Hillary's presentation, that there's a number of funding opportunities that are coming down from the federal, the state, even private partnerships, and really is to elevate those. Right? Elevate those opportunities so that Truckee and projects regarding outdoor recreation are considered. And right now, we're not even at the table. And so the opportunity that I've seen working with our partners for the last 6 months is if we are able to get organized, collaborate, and have some stakeholder engagement, we can help elevate some of these opportunities with key decision makers.
Okay. Who's our audience for advocacy?
For advocacy, I would say it's first and foremost the community. It's going to be the stakeholder engagement, but then also too, it's going to be the decision makers within these funding vehicles.
And what are we're just advocating for the projects we come up with? Is that the idea then?
Correct. Advocating for the funding. And the thing is, it's not only funding. It can be stakeholder engagement. There's opportunities that we are not currently taking advantage of because we just don't have a diverse stakeholder group together coming, and agreeing on some of these projects.
So with the stakeholder, we're just advocating improving the quality of outdoor education. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, no, totally. These are great questions. So with the advocating and stakeholder engagement, it is, it depends on what is within these funding opportunities and what is needed. And sometimes it is having diverse stakeholders come to an agreement to show this collaboration in order to elevate a project through. Sometimes it's funding. It just depends. But again, you need someone there that can understand this, bring the key people together so that we can help advance these.
Okay. I want to turn to Hillary for a couple questions, but don't go away, okay?
I won't, don't worry.
Okay, thank you. Hillary, I'm concerned that at a time that we're already dealing with housing crisis, the wildfire risks, COVID, and falling further behind on our greenhouse gas reduction goals, that we're now looking to expand our workload to be enhancing outdoor recreation projects. It partly seems ill-timed to me just because outdoor recreation right now is booming in our community. And we have local people complaining about the increased crowds, the increasing housing crisis due to greater tourism, and increasing wildfire risks. So first of all, with that context, I want to make sure that we are still pursuing funding opportunities for our priorities, recognizing that the legislation we're talking about that can fund recreation is the same legislation that has increased funding for wildfire protection, housing, and these things. So I'm assuming we need more manpower to take advantage, or woman power, I'm sorry, to take advantage of these funding opportunities that affect our priorities. So it's a long way of asking, are we well positioned? Do we have the resources to get the funding for these other priorities, take advantage of these other opportunities?
Yeah, I'll take that one. And then Jen, if you have anything you want to add. I believe that we are. We do track multiple grant funding opportunities, and that's partly done by staff. That's also done by our consultant, Joanne Anders, sort of across the board in different areas, with a strong emphasis on many of the housing funding opportunities, as well as infrastructure funding opportunities that are currently available, as well as new ones coming available. We also do work with our state advocate, Emmanuel Jones, as well as the new federal advocate who we're partnering with, along with Nevada County, Paragon, and work with them to help identify new opportunities that are coming along. So I do think that we are well positioned to address other areas as well. And also, again, would just identify that many of the projects we're looking at here are not new projects that we're proposing to add to our work plan. We're really saying that within our work plan, we have many projects we think are well aligned within this bucket of recreation, outdoor recreation, so that this would be an opportunity to help move along some of those priority projects like Legacy Trail Phase 4, bike share programs, microtransit, things like that that we're already scheduled to be working on.
Okay. That list, you pulled up the list a little bit earlier, and that relates to my second concern, which is the source of the funding for this project. The sustainability designation funds do not seem to me to be the right source of the contracts. I want to have you convince me otherwise. The sustainability designation in the general fund summary details describes it as being earmarked for use on meaningful and substantial sustainability projects that help reduce the town's greenhouse gas emissions. I see that in many of the projects that you put up. I see projects that are like the Legacy Trail that is in large part devoted to providing alternative transportation, a way of our not having to use vehicles to get somewhere. And I look at this outdoor recreation project, and it's not so much about alternative transportation, it's getting people to a trailhead to engage in recreation. So if anything, I see an increase in automotive use as outdoor recreation becomes more attractive. So I'm just focusing on the funding source right now. And when I look at the staff report, at least, the big issue in regards to outdoor recreation seems to be solving issues around high-use, peak period outdoor recreation. So that issue has to do more with crowd dispersal, and I don't see it so much as reducing greenhouse gases. What I recognize here is part of this outdoor experience includes having a gorgeous natural environment, and we don't want to destroy the thing that sustains us through overuse. But that's a subsidiary goal to enhancing recreation itself as an economic activity. It's my sense because of that we should be taking the money out of the general fund rather than the sustainability designation. What are your thoughts?
I was wondering if there was a question in there.
There is. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit challenging to answer that question because we haven't yet identified what the projects are specifically that we're discussing. Again, one of the steps in this process is developing criteria for evaluating what projects are important to the community. So if greenhouse gas reduction is an important priority, that can certainly factor into what projects we're prioritizing to keep moving forward. So with the example projects that I provided from our work plan, I see that there is certainly some nexus with greenhouse gas reduction with many of those projects, but I also see your perspective on maybe this should come from another source. So I think that's something that would be helpful for council to discuss this evening as an alternative funding source. If council does not want to have this come out of the sustainability designation, we do have funding in the Economic Development Partnership Program, and that's another fund source we could use. Those are funds that are set aside for partnership-related projects that help diversify our economy, create new jobs, or otherwise expand our economy and our tax base. So that could be another source we could look at.
Okay, thank you, Hillary.
If I can just elaborate a little bit, what might be helpful if the council chooses to go with the alternative funding source, which staff is supportive of either way. When we come back with projects, there may be projects identified that align really well with the sustainability set aside that you could choose to fund out of that at that time. Or, in Katie's example of a restroom or making a trail more ADA accessible, that aligns with the council's priority for community cohesion and accessibility, so there may be other funding opportunities for different projects within the general fund or other funds. So I think something just to consider as you have your deliberation with the funding source.
Thank you. Thank you, Hillary. Now I want to come back to you, Katie. I want to go to your, was it a proposal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And let's just go to the criteria. That's task 2. I wanted to make sure I understand that. These are the examples of project proposal criteria, and the first one's promote management of the region's public lands and waters. What did management in what way, and by whom?
Well, I would say it's the cross-jurisdiction collaboration with our federal land partners, and here with the Truckee Ranger District, it's just one example. I do work throughout the state, working on public lands and waters, and where I see a lot of opportunities for towns similar to Truckee is that partnership, because there is coordination that can happen with stakeholder engagement, funding, and it's really powerful to have these agencies talk together in order to get more aligned, streamline efficiencies. And so part of that, the first bullet point there is just promote the management and work together in order to address any of these public lands and waters needs that are surrounding our area right now.
Does this mean going above the district manager level?
No.
The district supervisor?
No, it is a very collaborative effort that happens here at the Truckee Ranger District, as well as our supervisor on the Tahoe. And even our neighboring in the Lake Tahoe, where we see some of the most successes is with our neighbor partners. Right now, I know that our Truckee Ranger District is working very closely with the Plumas as well as the Lake Tahoe just because of what's happening right now. And it's just, again, it's amplifying that coordination between these agencies so that they're talking, their staffs are talking, but also talking to the community and the decision makers here in town.
And what would we be talking about? Would it be about improving environmental protection? Would it be about protecting nesting sites or meadows or?
Well, I think it's conservation, it's restoration. I think it also is talking about fuel reduction projects. Right now, I think what we're going to find here is that there's going to be a lot of coordination happening post-wildfire of fuel reduction. And the thing is, it may not have a direct nexus on outdoor recreation, but there is a conservation standpoint. There is a watershed. And that's when you bring in other community stakeholders, nonprofits such as the Watershed Council, Sierra Business Council, whatnot, to really write support letters and advocate for funding and opportunities to advance these policies.
So then why aren't we doing that directly rather than going through this outdoor recreation trail, if you will, to advocate for these things?
I can't answer that from the town's behalf, but I'll just let you know this is very it is in the infancy. That one of the partners that has the most history is the folks down on the east side, the Mammoth Lakes folks. They've only been organized for the last, I would say, 5 years, but in that 5 years, they have been able to really bring some collaborative efforts with a lot of different, a diverse stakeholder group to advance these. And it's not just outdoor recreation because, like I said, it is conservation, protection, and again, but really what it is having a central point or a leader to kind of help elevate this and communicate this and be that, and the organization driving it.
So are you talking about going through a outdoor recreation constituency to argue for something with the Forest Service? Is this something we envision the town doing or a nonprofit doing? What are the mechanics here? Who's doing what?
Well, I think where I come in and where my expertise is I help folks understand conservation values through outdoor recreation. And that's where I've been doing my work in the state. And when I came to the town and kind of proposed this, is an economic driver to the town of Truckee is outdoor recreation. And so looking for opportunities, I saw that other folks that were doing throughout the state, I proposed what's in front of you. Okay. But the thing is, outdoor recreation isn't just a siloed stakeholder group. We work with the conservation community, we work with the business community, we work with nonprofit partners throughout for that collaboration, because as outdoor recreation is a key economic driver for our region, you can't have that partnership and collaboration without a lot of folks at the table.
And so I kind of see this
Sure.
as
Go ahead.
we don't have the mechanics figured out yet. Like, depending upon what the project is, what the funding source is, and what our staff availability is, that will help guide some of this. And of course, I mean, maybe what we need to get to is how can we get you to the point of being comfortable with the proposal, and what level of, are you looking for a level of participation going forward to understand these things better? Because I don't think we're here to figure this all out tonight.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to tell you where I'm going. I'm looking at reducing greenhouse gases and improving the environmental quality of our natural lands. I see outdoor recreation as, in many ways, imposing an adverse impact on the natural lands. I realize those are also some of the biggest supporters for natural land preservation. The same time we're stomping on the ground, we want to preserve it. I'm looking at these criteria, and I'm trying to find criteria that will advance what I hope are the council's interests in reducing greenhouse gases and improving the quality of our natural environment. And if we can do that through an outdoor recreation, great. Otherwise, if we're just dealing with crowd control, crowd dispersal, because of how attractive things are, which is my concern, I'm very unenthusiastic. I don't want to spend time on it, so I'm looking at these criteria and I'm trying to figure out how do I get criteria in the direction I would like to see the town go.
So I think those are very provocative questions to try to, but I think that's part of our deliberation rather than.
Well, I'm trying to understand what's being proposed in order to determine if I can accept it for purposes of our deliberation, or whether I should be talking about something more generic or specific.
Okay. Do you have more questions for?
I could go on all night. I think I've used up my time.
Let's deliberate a little, and we can always come back to some more questions if there's some specifics that we need to zone in on. Does that sound appropriate? Do you have something else?
I'm hogging the mic. I'll let it go for a while.
No, I was just going to suggest that in a lot of ways, this is very similar to the GHG collaboration in that we're setting out a framework in order to hopefully identify projects that align with council priorities and the community's interests to come forward for future discussion. So that's really where I see this being, as a framework to identify potential projects that would align with whatever you would like to point out as your preferred priorities, assuming they're going to align with our council priorities. But if you in your deliberations want to say GHG reduction is a major priority for me, accessibility is a major priority, and you have consensus, I think that would be good direction and feedback for us and Katie to hear, if you're willing to accept that this is more of a framework rather than anything very precise at this moment.
I think that's very helpful. Let me check in with Vice Mayor Henderson, and then I have just a couple of quick questions. Do you have any questions?
I have just one question. I know this is a contract with the town, but the proposal also mentions regional partners. And so I'm just curious sort of if and how this will integrate with the county. And I really ask because obviously they're also focused on outdoor recreation opportunities, for example, through their master plan on outdoor recreation. And I think from both sides, we're really interested in finding opportunities where we can collaborate, you know, for example, you mentioned, you know, bike share and those types of opportunities.
And that is, again, and thanks for saying like the framework. This is all to be identified, but in early conversations, we've said who could be, you know, key stakeholders to have that. And it is in the proposal to have the counties. Because to your point, Council Member or Vice Mayor, these folks are working on open space master plans, and they recently took advantage of some federal funding that came down to do this. And so again, showing this regional support helps advance some of these projects and funding opportunities.
And so as part of the work as well, then it really, it truly is sort of aligning those different partners and identifying opportunities that, you know, maybe the town could take advantage of on its own, but also that we could take advantage of with different regional partners.
Absolutely.
And
Thank
just
you.
to add to that, the county is going to be considering moving forward with or Nevada County, that is, moving forward with a recreation master plan for the county. So we really see this as working hand in hand with that effort and helping us in Truckee get our sort of projects aligned and understand what our local priorities are so that could feed into that broader effort if that project moves forward. We don't know for sure what the timing would be on that larger project yet.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you. Okay, just a couple of quick questions that might help assuage some of the other concerns. As these opportunities come up, council will be consulted on at what phases. When we apply for the grant, we've seen some of those. And then, of course, if we are awarding any projects or funds to facilitate those matching funds for those projects, correct? Are there any other touch points for council?
I anticipate that with this contract, we would, once we have sort of that draft prioritized list, that we would bring that back to council as a check-in point.
Okay.
And then you're correct, with most grants, not all, there is a point where we are required to get a resolution or otherwise authorize staff to apply for the grant. And then often there's matching funds sought in our town budgeting process, so that'd be another opportunity through our CIP project process. So there are multiple opportunities where council would be involved.
And so those are touch points for both the council and the community to be able to weigh in on whether or not that's in alignment with our priorities and needs of that time, or if there's something else that perhaps that we should be considering.
Yes.
Okay. Is there we do have some council designees on certain committees. Is there going to be a committee type function here, or is this just, and Katie, I hope you don't take this wrong, but I'm seeing you as staff augmentation, and are you okay with that? Like,
Yeah,
you're
well,
really helping us get across the finish line on these grants, and so I'm looking to you to see what kind of involvement you're going to have from staff and/or council.
The collaboration and partnership is key, and so I see directly working with town staff and leadership because I need that direction, but also this nests very nicely within the resources and the processes that the town has currently. So, yeah.
Great. So did you guys have any expectations of any additional council service on a committee, or is it really just the touch points of things coming back to council?
The intention at this point was the touch points. I would imagine, depending on what different project possibilities come up, a different council member would be interested in those discussions, and that might make it very confusing. Does it sort of come back as a whole council? Would make sense in my mind.
I would agree. Okay, thank you. So at that point, Councilmember Zabriskie, do you have additional questions that you would like to consider right now before deliberation.
Is this something that staff could bring back in 3 months or halfway through the 6 months?
If council would like, we could schedule an update.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Wonderful. Was there something else? Thought I heard somebody. Do we have any public comment on this agenda item? Nobody's jumping up? Okay, great. Back to council deliberation. Who would like to kick us off?
Can I actually ask another question of Hillary? Sorry. Just with this alternative now where we could utilize the Economic Development Partnership designation, can you just tell us a few other things that come out of that fund, just so, I know you said it's to expand our economy, but.
Yeah, so it's general fund dollars within economic development operating budget, and it really is earmarked for if a project comes along that council sees as having extraordinary economic benefit for the community, that we can tap into those funds to fund these projects. It's something that we we budget every year, or have for the past several years. It's not a fund that we tend to use every year. So it's something, we don't have any projects specifically identified for that fund source this year. So they are funds that would be available for this.
And what amount do we usually budget in that fund?
We have $50,000 budgeted.
Thank you.
Any other questions or deliberation?
I'm happy to start deliberating.
Okay, jump in. I think we're ready.
I think this is very important for our community. Listening to Councilmember Zabriskie, I looked at it from a different lens of, I understand your concerns of, is this going to increase outdoor recreation, things like that, but I was looking at it more of, people are already here, how do we make the experience better and make it less impacting on our natural environment? So, ways to keep people on trails, or, recreate in areas they're supposed to rather than going places they're not, or things like that. I also am very comfortable, making some more specific priorities, as Jen and Hillary mentioned. Greenhouse gas emission reduction is important. I'm happy to hear from my fellow council members if we want to make more specifics. But I think this makes a lot of sense for us to pursue, especially with all the money that's going to be coming available. I know our staff pays a lot of attention, but they've got a lot on their plate, so having someone else that's paying a different type of attention to maybe some other opportunities would be good. I guess in my mind, I'm still kind of weighing what makes sense of if we do fund it from sustainability versus economic development. Hearing that addition from Hillary, I guess that makes me more comfortable if we want to go with the alternative and utilize economic development, since there are a lot of sustainability priorities that we have for our town. So maybe it does make sense to pull this funding from a different source. So those are my starting thoughts, but happy to hear from the rest of my council members.
Thank you. You want to go ahead, Councilmember Zabriskie?
Sure. Visit Truckee Tahoe has been wildly successful in attracting visitors, and we have a gorgeous environment for them to go outdoors and enjoy. The COVID's only added to the pressure on our natural environment. My initial and major concern with this proposal is that it was directed at further promoting through unclear mechanisms, outdoor recreation, and providing some mitigation. There's some references that we're going to mitigate the increase so that, in effect, we'd have a net increase in greenhouse gases and probably a net increase in environmental impacts. Katie has explained, no, this is not a marketing program, and it sounds like actually this might be more of a program to find funding to help improve the quality of our natural resources, whether it's helping improve our meadows or erosion control, wildlife habitat, keeping people out of nesting areas or bedding areas at different times of year. Maybe that's more what this project's directed at, which I would be happy to see the town support. So generally, thank you, staff, for suggesting general guidelines. I think that's what you were saying. I think we should be emphasizing that we want this program, to the extent the town's doing it, and it's doing it through an outdoor recreation lens, if you will, that the goal would be to look for funding that can help us to protect the environment and reduce greenhouse gases. And in some ways, I think let's just get the money and give it to the Watershed Council, because they're already in this business of trying to improve our environment. But it appears that the people, everyone supporting this feels we can do it through outdoor recreation, in which case I'm amenable. I think the money should come out of the general fund, not sustainability, because I don't see it yet. I don't see us being committed yet to the sustainability aspect, and I would like to see this come back after 3 months.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Vice Mayor Hutchison?
Thank you. I think that, so one of our council goals obviously is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the other part of that is also to be a leader in environmental sustainability and stewardship. And Councilmember Zabriskie, I really appreciate your concerns that the advocacy component, it's not necessarily directly tied to GHG reductions, but several of those example projects could very well be. I think that several of the example projects also align with being that leader in stewardship. I think that moving forward with this contract also really advances our council goals related to community cohesion as we think about equitable access to our natural resources. In terms of the criteria itself, I would say I don't necessarily view our role here tonight to identify those specific criteria. The collaborative stakeholder group, my understanding is, will be doing that work and informing what those criteria are. So I really view the decision tonight from a policy perspective as whether we want to support this advocacy related to advancing outdoor recreation opportunities. That said, potentially if, Councilmember Zabriskie, if you want it to come back, maybe what you really want it to come back for is to see the specific criteria that the stakeholder group proposes. And I'm not sure if that's what you want, but I'd love to hear if that's what you're thinking. I think that's where I'm at right now.
That's good clarification. Thank you. Your thoughts?
Hillary, could you pull up the list of projects we're using as examples? I see all of the projects on here as being more directly related, certainly, to reducing greenhouse gases and environmental protection. I don't see them in the context of outdoor recreation. Legacy Trail provides recreational benefits, but what it does is allow me to get someplace without having to drive my car. So there's a strong transportation element in there that makes that acceptable to me in terms of reducing greenhouse gases. I don't have to drive there in order to enjoy it.
Let me just pause you right there. So this outdoor recreation umbrella, that's the funding source, right? It's not necessarily the driving prioritization. And so as long as we can make a connection to one of these projects under that grant cycle definition, I don't care whether it's called outdoor recreation or not. But if it serves one of these projects, it serves our community and our priorities.
I feel the same way. I'm responding to Councilmember Henderson's statement that she is in favor of outdoor recreation opportunities, and I think she put a period at the end of that. I think she did. And also there was a reference to, I'm responding to you, Councilmember Henderson, in terms of these projects being examples of outdoor recreation opportunities. And if these are the types of projects we're talking about, I can support it. These do not come across to me otherwise. Well, the litter reduction, I'm going to put aside for a minute. It's a wonderful thing, but I don't think that of that as greenhouse gas reduction. Donner Lake Environmental Stewardship Group, if we want to think of that as outdoor recreation, you can put that label on it, but I see that as very important to protecting the environment of the lake, and it might end up reducing the number of people that want to come to engage in recreation at the lake.
And that access it, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add, I mean, I'm viewing outdoor recreation as that umbrella, and I think this is very much just an issue of sort of like what lens we're looking through and like slicing this. Legacy Trail Phase 4, yes, for some people that will very much be, I can now get out of my car and I can connect from here to here. For others, it is outdoor recreation. I want to take my 4-year-old on his little Strider bike and go out for an hour and enjoy the beautiful landscape along the river. So I guess I'm saying I agree with you, and I'm viewing outdoor recreations through sort of this broad umbrella and lens, and very much want to see it promote these types of projects for our community.
Okay, so for me, that's more of an economic development issue. Okay, and in terms of criteria, what I can say is kind of criteria I'd like to see are the criteria that emphasize a reduction in greenhouse gases, that emphasize environmental quality. And I think maybe that's what this is all about, is about mitigating the impact of outdoor recreation.
I see that certainly as being a high priority or an opportunity. And Katie, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I just wanted to add outdoor recreation can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different folks. Like, for example, when I was advocating for an Office of Outdoor Recreation in California, there's about 72 items, and one of them is bird watching. One of them is picnicking. I myself am a backcountry skier, and we'll be going to the huts. That's not how everyone recreates. And so as a person that has had a lens on this, the more connectivity or connections that we can make of like what outdoor recreation is and our stewardship goals and economic development, greenhouse gases, and we can really shape that narrative, that will help advance this. Okay? So I just wanted to add that, but yes, it can. There are a number of ways that you could categorize outdoor recreation.
Thank you. And so I think we're very clear on where your priority and focus on is. Maybe we could just touch base with the other council members. Do you align with that prioritization or that elevation of the greenhouse gas emission reductions for this contract? That it sounds to me like what Councilmember Zabriskie is asking for is that we try to filter these projects first and foremost by their greenhouse gas emissions or environmental impact reduction, correct?
I put that in tandem with the environmental quality, and my point is this is largely an economic development effort, and I would take the money out of the general fund.
Okay.
I think that there's enough direction here that I think the only thing we need to do is, with that direction, is switch and have the money come out of the general fund rather than sustainability and provide for a 3-month.
So, sitting over here, it sounds like you actually have a lot of consensus amongst the 4 of you, just a little bit different terminology and way you're viewing this. I think it's very clear that you want to focus on projects that align with your council priorities, and that could be GHG reductions. In some cases, it could be equitable access to trails. I think we would keep all that open and bring those back to you for further discussion. I think the hinging point is where you would like to see this funded from, whether it be in the general fund out economic development or the sustainability set aside. Staff would support either, so it's council's preference on that. If you want to reserve the sustainability set aside for future projects that might come out of this, that would be fine.
And so my 2 cents on that is being the council member that sat at that budget meeting and asked for that sustainability designation fund, I have, as you well know, during our priority sessions, been very protective of it. I want it to go to things that actually do reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I am in alignment with Councilmember Zabriskie on that 100%. I do see this as having more than a possibility. There will be greenhouse gas emission reductions. It's just that some projects that come out of this might not be. And so that to me is the nuance. And I'm comfortable either way. That designation is meant to be spent and spent to improve the community. I also fully expect to advocate for refunding of that fund designation when and if our budget allows, so that we can continue these types of projects. So I don't want it to be a fear of spending it, because I want to spend it to do the good and then refund it. So I'm good either way.
I'm happy to jump in again. I'm happy either way as well. I guess I would maybe somewhat disagree with Councilmember Zabriskie, how you said you look at this as purely an economic development driver, because again, I am seeing it that there are aspects of it that are sustainability focused or accessibility focused, and not just increasing our tax base or economic development. That said, I like how you just said that, Mayor, in that, well, some projects will be sustainability related, maybe not all of them super specifically. So therefore, I think as I'm talking, I'm going to go more with economic development fund is where I would land. I would support funding coming from that.
I'm comfortable with that funding source as well.
Okay, then, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that we approve the recommendation with one change and one addition. The change being that the money comes out of the Economic Development Partnership Designation Fund, and the one addition is we have an update at 3 months.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
We need a second.
Oh, whoops.
need a second.
Sorry. I'm ready. Second?
I'll second.
Great. How about all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are unanimous. Thank you, everybody. And I really appreciate your time here tonight, Katie, and all the great questions. I'm very excited about what's going to come out of this.
And thank you for the answers.
Okay. And we are very fortunate to have Katie working with us on this. Her knowledge and depth on this subject is amazing, so thank you. Item 7.3. This is award a contract for classification and compensation study.
Honorable Mayor and council members, I am Bonnie Thompson-Harden. I'm the HR analyst here at the town, and I'm very excited to get to talk to you about a compensation and classification study.
All right. We are too, Bonnie.
Great. So first, let's talk about what in shorthand, it's often referred to as a comp and class study. So what is this and why would we be embarking on this process? So a comp and class study is really a unique way for a public agency to both gauge whether our current structure as an organization, which involves our wage matrix, which we recently brought to you for your approval. And on that wage matrix, we have salary ranges, and within those salary ranges, we have job classifications. And then each job classification has a job description, which explains what that person does in that role. So this is an opportunity for us to double check that our job description still makes sense, that the structure of our divisions still makes sense, and that a different structure would what the structure we need is to best serve the public. In addition, there's a compensation portion of this. So we would compare ourselves to other similar agencies to make sure that we are accurately compensating our employees for the job that they're doing, and that we're competitive with other public agencies that have a similar cost of living and a similar government structure, same services, similar budget. And so it's an opportunity to just kind of check in. We did the last one of these in 2014. So every 5 to 10 years, it's really necessary to make sure that we're still on market, on point in the market. And particularly right now, as we face this housing crisis, we want to make sure that we're retaining and attracting good employees, and that we're paying an amount that can make sure, hopefully allow our employees to live here as well. So the first portion of this is a classification study. And if, as you, in our recommendation, you award the contract to Coffin Associates, what they would do is they would first meet with our steering committee, which would involve both human resources staff as well as several representatives from all of our employee groups. So that's the General Employees Association, the Mid-Managers Association, and the Police Officers Association. So a steering committee to really talk about what we already do here, what our structure is, what we're hoping to get out of this, and how we move forward. And they would research our policies and our culture. And then the meat really happens at this next stage. This is where COF would talk with, they essentially do an orientation with all employees to begin with, to explain what this process is, why it's important, why we need their buy-in. And then every employee would be given a position description questionnaire. And this is essentially a survey. What do you do daily? What do you do monthly? What do you do every year? What are the certifications and trainings and licenses you need to do your job? Do you work in a vehicle? Do you work at a desk? What are the physical things you do every day? And what are the skills and training you learn on the job that are necessary for this type of work? So every employee would fill out a position description questionnaire and return it to COF. And then they would meet individually with every employee. And this was really an important part of their presentation and their approach that we really gravitated towards, because they wanted to speak with every employee, make sure that the employees felt listened to, and make sure that they really have the opportunity to explain their job, not just in writing, but in a conversation, and explain what their job duties are. And then those position description questionnaires would be reviewed by their supervisors and managers to make sure everyone's in alignment on what these job descriptions are and what an employee does in that role. From that point, COF would then draft job classifications. So we have job classifications right now, but it might require new ones or modifications or updates. A recent update was from secretary to administrative technician. Those kind of nomenclature changes that we want to make sure we're in pace with the market with. And then they check in with town staff again to make sure that what they're doing makes sense and still makes sense with how we want to move forward. And then employees get a second opportunity to look at the new job descriptions, make sure it resonates with what they do. And this is really where it's kind of more art than science, because there's a standard framework for conducting a classification study, but this is where it's a difficult conversation to have with employees, because they're talking about what they do on a daily basis. They're very proud of what they do. And sometimes what COF might recommend or what the town might recommend in a job description might not match up with what they think they do. And so it's an ongoing conversation, and we really appreciated COF's kind of hands-on approach here to make sure that employees once again felt listened to and had an opportunity to have an informal appeal process if they felt that it didn't accurately classify the work they do. So COF would help us with that and walk through this process with every employee who filed an informal appeal. And then they'd issue us a final report for just the classification study. Now, in tandem, they'd also start working on a compensation study. So once everyone's in the right job description, now we have to figure out where they fit in the salary matrix and how we compare to other agencies. So the first step of that would be, once again, checking in with the steering committee and town leadership, town manager, and picking our comparator agencies. So once again, this is, a difficult conversation as well, or a meaty conversation. That's perhaps a better way of saying it, because we have to pick agencies to compare ourselves to. So in the past, we really had we had picked agencies that were close by. So we had Nevada City, Sparks, Reno, Placer County, agencies where our employees live and work, or live, and where they come to work for us, because that was kind of where we get our employee base. However, in 2014, we determined that our cost of living was different than Nevada City, and we needed some way to account for that. And so in the last study, we added in some additional agencies, Mill Valley, City of Lincoln, and City of Folsom, to kind of address that cost of living component, so that to more accurately recognize that Truckee's an expensive place to live, and try and help make sure that our classifications were in line with similar both resort communities, but also kind of a unique niche that we find ourselves in. There's not an easy agency to compare ourselves to. So once we as a group pick those 10 to 12 agencies, we would move on to picking benchmark classifications. So that's really, for instance, in our engineering division, we have Engineering Tech 1, Engineering Tech 2, Assistant, Associate, and Senior Engineer, Engineering Manager, and Town Engineer. So it's called a job family. And so we might survey just 2 or 3 of those positions, and once we align those with the market, then we can place all of those positions internally and get probably 10% between each range. That's what we have right now. So once we pick those positions, well, who are we going to survey against? And it has to be one that is a good match at almost all of the agencies. Then COF would then collect survey data. So things, not just base wages, but what's our whole compensation package? What's our retirement package? What's our health, dental, vision costs for employees? All of those kinds of things. What are the other perks and benefits we provide? And then COF would do a data analysis. So this is where they look at all of those positions and try to figure out where they fit in our wage matrix. So how do we as an organization evaluate a senior planner versus a finance manager? Where do they fit in this salary matrix internally? And how do our perhaps unique job descriptions fit in comparison with other job descriptions? So that's called an internal relationship analysis. And once again, that would be done in connection and talking through with staff why they're making these choices that they're making. And this was something that was really important to us, that employees understood the why of how different jobs are classified at different levels. And then COF would help us with an implementation plan. How do we make those changes? Would draft a final report, and then allow for a formal appeal process. So one thing that COF highly advocates as a reason to pick them is because they have very few actual formal appeals when they get to this stage of the process. And that was important to us, because what that demonstrated is that throughout the process, they've talked with employees, they've listened to employees, they've gotten employee buy-in. So that by the time we get to the end, there's very few employees that are really feeling that they weren't heard and that we didn't accurately classify them in the correct either job description or range. So not everyone's going to come out of this feeling good. But we want to make sure that every employee understands the reason why we made the decisions that we made. And that was one of the reasons we really gravitated to COF's approach. And then we would bring it back for a presentation to council. So why COF and Associates? I've already talked about their kind of collaborative and interactive approach that the committee found valuable. So we had 3 proposals to our RFP. We had a small steering committee of myself and 1 representative from each employee group get together, and we agreed that COF's approach was both committed to employee buy-in and really collaborative with town staff, and we appreciated that. In addition, they're a very qualified and highly recommended firm, and they have worked with several special districts in our area, as well as other mountain communities. And so they have that knowledge of how to compare to other agencies as well. So we thought their qualifications were highly regarded and well worthy of conducting this study. Unfortunately, we didn't anticipate the cost 8 years later. After we based our original budget off of the cost from the 2013-14 study. And while COF wasn't the lowest bidder, they weren't the highest either. And we do feel that we're asking council for a budget amendment for $89,000. We feel that this is warranted based on the fact that the committee believed that we would get the best final product, that it was very valuable for us to maintain and improve our relationships with employees, and we wanted to make sure that this process allowed employees to feel listened to and heard throughout the whole process and understand the reason why. So a good compensation and classification study can help us aid in retention and satisfaction of employees. It can help us recruit new employees. And as we all kind of muddle through this housing crisis and what do we do and the cost of living here in town, this is an important component to really making sure that we're addressing both our current employees and future employees' concerns. And then COF actually proposed 2 different cost plans. One was completely virtual, one was allowed for in-person interviews. In a pre-COVID world, I would have 100% wanted every interview to be in person. That's not the world, of course, that we're living in right now. But our employee groups did recommend that they'd like for some of our larger classifications, so our police officers, our street maintenance workers, perhaps our equipment mechanics, the ability to have an in-person larger meeting. Because these employee surveys could be conducted as a group setting. There are 10 of you who work in this job description. What do you do? Rather than an individual handwritten survey. And so they thought that this would better resonate with their employees. And so while we don't anticipate doing in-person interviews for the majority of this process, we wanted to have the opportunity, if COVID allowed us to have those kind of targeted in-person meetings with larger classifications so that we could have a larger conversation and really hear the group dynamic. So that's why we recommended the higher cost proposal just for those scenarios, with the recognition that we will probably come in much closer to the completely virtual option. And then the third part of the staff the process here today is to make sure that our current understandings and our employment philosophies still resonate with the council. These are fundamental ways that we conduct human resources here at the town, and so we want to make sure they're still in alignment with your goals and your policies, because they could fundamentally change both the nature of the study and what the outcome might be. So our current the first policy understanding is that we want to attract and retain high-quality employees, that we want to reward excellent performance, that we want to retain relative parity between all employee groups, allowing for obvious differences. So what does that mean? That means we have police officers, we also have building inspectors, we also have engineering managers. How do we as an organization recognize that these are all our employees? And how do we come up with parity, recognizing that a police officer does do a different job than some of our other staff members? So trying to figure out what that looks like and maintaining as much parity as we can throughout our organization. And then, of course, maintaining the fiscal health of the town while considering all of the above. The second policy understanding is to maintain our current pay-for-performance system. And this is a little challenging or complicated. So back in 1997, when we did our first compensation and classification study, the town council implemented, a pay-for-performance system. So this is certainly not a unique system, but it's not the one you traditionally see in a lot of public agencies. Lots of public agencies have a range, just like we do, but then every year you move up a step. Regardless of your performance, every year you're moving through the range. The town really wanted to recognize high performance and make sure that employees were dedicated and excited to work at the town. And so they put in a pay-for-performance system. So this is a picture of our, just one range in our salary matrix. And you can see there's a minimum and a control point and then a maximum. So that minimum to control point, that's a standard range. That's the industry standard, 25%. So when we compare to another agency, that's the range we're looking at. The town has then put an additional 10% on top of that. And that means, hey, we're going to give you the opportunity to earn an additional 10%. And we have lots of employees who are either there because they're outstanding performers and they've moved very quickly through the range, or perhaps someone's been here a very long time, and also hopefully a very great employee, and has made it all the way to the range maximum. So it's the opportunity to earn an additional 10%. Now, as an employee, what happens is we are all evaluated in an annual performance evaluation based on the same metrics. They're different for each position, but it's the same metrics across the board for every employee. And then based on the year-on-year budget-to-budget revenue, an employee can earn a different, up to a certain percentage pay increase. This year, we're in the 5% pool, which means a top performing employee could potentially earn 6%. In an economic downturn, that could be 1 or 2% based on our budget and the fiscal health of the town. But we have in the past, during negotiations, evaluated how employees do. If we had a step system, how would our system, an employee, both a high-performing and a low-performing employee, do through our system compared to a step system? And in the past, we have determined that our system ends up being better for the employee. They move through the range class faster, and they have the opportunity to earn more money. So our recommendations today are to both award a contract to Coffin Associates for $139,000, to approve a budget amendment to allow us to do that. And then our recommendation is to direct us to maintain the existing strategies on employment and our pay for performance system. But obviously, we are here to listen to your direction and listen to how we should move forward. Thank you.
That was a very good presentation. Thank you very much, Bonnie. I didn't actually realize all those steps that they were going to go through. Jen and I had talked about the one-on-one conversations with each individual staff member, which is pretty unusual, right, in these?
The other proposals had a limited amount of employees they would talk to, not every single employee.
Yeah, that's been my experience anyway. Okay, I guess that was my first question. Do you have any questions over here?
Just two. I don't think I saw a work plan or timeline for the work in the proposal, and so I'm just curious, when will this work actually commence, and how long does this full process tend to take?
Excellent question. So it's buried in there, but it is actually about a 6-month from start to finish, so that would put us at the end of February, beginning of March to complete this.
And just to confirm, the employee philosophy that you provided, and then it's also in the staff report, that's been the same since the town incorporated, correct?
It is.
Okay, correct. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you. On this side?
Bonnie, can you tell me what is the source of information for determining the cost of living in Truckee?
I'm going to defer to the financial experts.
So COF will help us determine which cities would represent a good cost of living comparable. So we don't know what criteria they're thinking of. It's all up to negotiation. So if they bring us something, we're like, we don't understand this, we can ask for more information or pressure them more. But they do this, this is all that they do, is just compare and do compensation and classifications for government agencies in California and the Western region. So we would basically help them determine that. And we don't have anything particular planned right now.
Councilmember Zabriskie, are you asking what we currently base our COLAs off of?
I'm wondering if you have independent data that tells us what the cost of living is in Truckee as distinguished. You can get data for the county from a number of sources. But it sounded to me as if you have some data source or some way of calculating a living wage or a cost of living in Truckee itself.
So that's actually, they're not going to actually tell us what it costs, what would be the appropriate wage to pay somebody. In that sense, what they're doing is they're going to take our job classifications and find those job classifications at other similar agencies that we're going to help them determine. And they're going to say, at those agencies, this is what is paid to those positions. So what we've done in the past is we were using comparable agencies that were geographically near, but during the last compensation and classification study, the steering committee, which was the employee groups, and the town agreed that we shouldn't just use geographically near agencies. We should also look at agencies that potentially have a similar cost of living. The way that they determined which agencies they were going to use that had the similar cost of living was kind of, there wasn't like a hard science about it. It was, they went out and they said, well, Benicia has very similar services to you, and I'm not sure if Benicia was one, but just an example, we're going to use Benicia. They said they have very similar services provided, and the housing prices are very similar. So that's kind of how they got there, not necessarily like down to a science of this. To live here, a person would have to make, $89 an hour or whatever that would be. So it's kind of a more negotiated and fluid process.
Thank you, Nicole.
To Vice Mayor Henderson's question, so if this was completed in February, March, then that would be enough time for new compensation amounts to be budgeted for our next fiscal year budget, correct?
That would certainly help. One of our other concerns is that we will be entering negotiations with the Police Officers Association this late fall and winter. And so this will inform our discussion with them and what those negotiations look like. 6 months is still a reasonable time frame to be able to inform those discussions and then make changes for the budget cycle.
It's a tight timeline for sure to meet negotiations and even in budgeting, really. I've worked with COF before in another agency, and the level of customer service, if you will, was far beyond anything I had seen before. So I think it's worth the extra time and investment to have a good product at the end that we can all feel comfortable with. We're never going to get 100% agreement on everything, but the goal is to make sure everybody understands the reasoning why we picked the comparators we picked or agreed on. We picked the job classifications to benchmark against, and there's no questions as to that. We may not like them, but we understand why and can at least accept that. And that's on both sides of the table. It's not just the employee groups that may not be completely happy. We are going to have to give concessions too.
I do want to add that we hope that the outcome of picking those comparator agencies gets us to a point that we're paying our employees a living wage. Like, that's the goal, but it was kind of like a roundabout way of getting there.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, roundabout way of getting there and maintaining our financial stability. Right. Okay. My only real question is again, Bonnie, thank you so much for taking us through all those phases, because I didn't realize that appeal process. And so is it traditional for the appeal process to be part of the base contract work, or if there's multiple appeals, is that kind of an addition to the contract?
Great question. So the informal appeal process, which is through in the job classification section, would be completed completely by COF. And if there's 2 levels of appeal, then they would handle both of those. The formal appeal process, hopefully we don't have very many people in that get to that section, and they have. It is not included in this contract, so we would have an hourly rate if we wanted them to help us with it, or we could handle that on our own. But ideally, the scale of that it won't be in comparison to what the informal appeal process early on would be.
Just kind of lends to that whole, I'd rather invest in the value of being heard rather than the cost of the appeal. So thank you. That makes great sense to me. All right, that was some commentary there. Do we have public comment on this agenda item? Anything? Okay, back to us for deliberation.
I'm happy to jump in because I just went through a class study at my job. And so I know when you fill out the survey, it's so hard to really write down all you do and, get ours. We had to break down percentages of your time and all that. So I think it's great that this plan would allow for interviews with all employees, because I think that allows everybody to explain it better, knowing how hard that was to go through a written survey. So I am supportive of of staff's recommendations. And I also support the current philosophies and pay-for-performance system. I think we want to have the best employees.
I agree with Councilmember Romack.
Excellent, thank you. Vice Mayor Henderson?
I agree as well. We want to retain our employees. We want to be competitive. We want high employee satisfaction. It sounds like, Bonnie, the last one was done 7 years ago, and the cycle is usually 5 to 10 years, so it's time. So I'm ready to make a motion and move this forward.
Great. I think we are unanimous in this, that I just want to comment that I did read the report in 2014 because, it was a curiosity factor, given that I worked in a similar range in the community, and it's very informative, and I hope the community does look at this, because it is amazing what our employees are doing here. We do have some really highly qualified, highly skilled, high-performing workers. And I also think it's really critical that we're looking at the whole benefit package, that this is not just a wage assessment, because we've learned a lot over COVID, but I think one of the most important things for me is the value of that whole benefit package and how we're being valued as employees. And I want to make sure that our employees feel that way too. So with that, I am in support of this as well. So do we have a motion?
I will make a motion that we award the contract to Coffin Associates for $139,425, that we approve the budget amendment for $89,425, and that we maintain the existing strategies on employee philosophy and the pay-for-performance system.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we are unanimous again. Thank you, everybody. Bonnie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7.4. This should be a short one. Can we finish off? Great, we're good and keep going. So designate League of California Cities voting delegate and provide direction regarding the league's 2021 resolutions. Judy.
I only have a 20-slide presentation.
Okay.
Just kidding. So the League of California Cities every year has their annual conference. Two of your council are attending that conference this year. That would be Mayor Klostad and Vice Mayor Henderson. Each year, at the end of that conference, the cities appoint a voting delegate to discuss and debate, as you have today, the resolutions that the League are putting forward for this year's consideration. So in addition to asking you to designate a member for the voting, you may want to instruct your voting delegate in some form or fashion on how you feel about the two resolutions that the League is putting forward this year. One of them, the first one is related to helping state legislators understand the value of dividing some taxes for online purchases among cities that don't necessarily have the distribution centers that collect those taxes for the cities. And the second one is related to helping fund a state agency that oversees the railroad utility, for lack of a better term, in the state of California, to help them monitor and progress the maintenance of the railroad right-of-ways. And I think we've witnessed it here in Truckee, where, maybe there's graffiti in the railroad right-of-way or damage or that type of thing, and it really helps the CPUC oversee that utility in order to help them maintain their properties. So those are the two resolutions that the League will consider this year, and it's really up to you who you want to designate and how you feel about what direction you want to give them on those two resolutions. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Judy. Do we have any council questions? Any questions? Councilmember Zabriskie?
No questions.
Okay. Do we have any public comment? Nope. Okay. back to deliberation. I thought it was a very interesting quote from one of the advocacy letters. It says, if you are not at the table, then you are on the menu. Now, it gave me pause for thought. Okay. Comments, questions, or commentary?
Do we have 2 willing delegates?
We have 2 willing delegates. We did discuss today that we are both still reserved and planning on going, and they do have some great COVID protocols in place, including vaccination records. But I'm reserving the right to stay home if I feel like that's the necessary move. So just that caveat. I'm planning on going, but we're not sure.
Those are all my questions.
So if one of us is there to represent,
Can I ask Judy a question then? If we choose one of them and that person stays home, but the other one decides to go for some reason?
The league provides for a designate and alternate, so you can choose one as your delegate and one as your alternate.
Do you guys want to rock, paper, scissors, or?
I was thinking arm wrestle.
I'd like to see that.
No, it doesn't matter to me.
I'm comfortable with whatever you want as well.
Okay, then we'll just do delegate and alternate, and hopefully one of us will be there in person.
Yes.
And then probably more important to Judy's comment, do you have any direction for us on the 2 resolutions?
So on delegate and alternate, I have to choose one of you. So did you want Vice Mayor Henderson to be your delegate and you would be the alternate based on your first comment?
Oh, are you
That's
for
fine.
sure going? Because it sounded like we were both in the same boat.
I mean, I think we're both in the same boat, but regardless, one of us is going to be the delegate and one's going to be the alternate, right?
Yeah. So I'll just be the delegate, and
Okay.
Vice Mayor Henderson
Thank
will be the alternate. Okay. And thoughts on, well, let's look at the railroad resolution first. Do we have any concern or opposition to that? Let's frame it that way. I think it's in our interest to advocate for this coalition.
Agreed.
Okay. And the first resolution, do we want to be at the table or on the menu?
At the table.
I had a little exchange with Jen on this earlier, so it doesn't appear to be a very significant issue for us, but would you like to elaborate a little bit, Jen?
Sure, and I'll ask Nikki if she, unfortunately, we weren't able to pull the numbers to actually tell you what the impact was. It tends to not be that large of an issue for us, and we make up that loss with other pool money. I don't know, Nikki, if you want to add anything to that, or if you were able to find any of the... Oh, right. It's one agency that impacts this decision, and because it's sales tax, it's confidential, so we can't name the business. So maybe you can just accept that it's not a huge impact for us, and that could maybe help you decide if you want to be at the table or on the menu. The league tends to not want to advocate for things that have winners and losers, as Nikki, I think, shared yesterday. If you look at it from that lens, we're not a big loser in this party.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
It's pretty much so a wash. I guess my only question would be, if we were to look 10 years into the future, is that significantly different? Is it still kind of a wash, or is that impossible to contemplate?
It's impossible to contemplate. So what I was telling Jen is probably a better issue for us to focus our advocacy efforts on is trying to get a change in the way that the pool distributions are calculated. Currently, the way that the state determines that distribution is they say, here's all the brick and mortar sales in each jurisdiction in each county, and then they divide out online sales tax based on the brick and mortar sales, which doesn't really, I mean, it may be that they just don't have a way of collecting the data otherwise. I'm not positive, but so like a better issue for us to spend our advocacy efforts on would be getting the state to figure out a way to allocate the online sales tax based on online sales, because we have a bigger online sales presence than other areas just by the nature of us not having a lot of stores that people can get their necessities from. So yeah, it's really hard for us to say what certainly those distribution centers are probably going to continue to grow. So yes, certainly it will continue to theoretically increase, but the overall impact, it's really hard for me to say.
Okay. Understood. Thank you. Any other commentary or thoughts you want to share? Otherwise, we'll do the best we can.
I trust your judgment.
Thank you, sir.
Go forthwith, or whatever they say.
Okay. Thank you. That is very nice to hear. Okay, you don't need well, is there any public comment on that? Did I already ask? I think I did. You don't need a vote on that, do you? No, we're good? Okay. So we're just down to council reports. Do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. I had a meeting with the Friends of the Library and then a second meeting with the Friends, and Jen and Hillary, I wanted to thank you both again just for getting together to brainstorm around the library land acquisition, which is incredibly important to move this effort forward and also complicated because there are a lot of landowners involved. I also attended the CCL Latinx event, and that was really to celebrate 3 just incredible young women who recently completed 10-week climate advocacy internships right here in Truckee. So I just wanted to share their names with you. Donnie Paniagua Ruiz, Estefania Morales, and Karina Solis Martinez. And they've devoted so much time and energy over the past 10 weeks to work on climate solutions, both locally and nationally, in developing videos that CCL is putting out as part of their national advocacy effort. So just really amazing. And then I also met with Jen, Supervisor Bullock, and Allison Lehman. We talked about outdoor recreation, the bike share grant funding opportunities, the Pines to Mines Trail, and the library. I think those were the key things.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was so sorry to miss that CCL event, so thank you for attending, and my kudos to them all.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Councilmember Zabriskie?
Nothing to report.
And I last week attended, along with a few staff members, I believe Hillary, Jen, and Shauna were all on the virtual Lunch and Learn series with the Mountain Housing Council. It was on new California housing budget allocations. So kind of to what you were speaking to earlier, Councilmember Zabriskie, I can vouch staff is paying very close attention to funding sources for our priorities. So that was interesting. There's a lot of different things out there. So good discussion. And then I went on vacation, so I didn't do much else town related. But I did want to mention also with the Mountain Housing Council that tomorrow is the first community meeting, 4 o'clock. It is virtual. So just if any community members wanted to attend that.
How would they find that?
You could go to mountainhousingcouncil.org.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate us all. Vice Mayor Henderson called me earlier today, and she's like, am I missing something? I don't see anything really controversial on this agenda. I was like, no, this is a more normal meeting. So this was great. I attended the mayor's manager's Zoom. We were back to Zoom, which was kind of disappointing, but it's always good to talk to that group. And over the weekend, I did a walk for Measure T, hanging door hangers. We still have some packets that we need to get distributed. So if anybody has some time and would like to, please let me know. You can either text me or go to yesont.vote and sign up there. And then, of course, the major push was finalizing the Greenhouse Gas Coalition MOU, which thank you again to all of you for approving tonight. I am so excited. and finally doing some meetings and with staff and constituents, preparing for the GPAC this Thursday to hopefully finalize the land use alternatives. So thank you, everybody, for attending and for sticking around. Watch our meeting. We are actually not going to be meeting on our traditional time, which would be September 14th, because that is Election Day. So our next meeting will not be until September 28th here. Well, we're not sure, actually, if it will be here in Chambers or virtual. So check first.
Correct. We will have a meeting. We're just not sure the format at this point until
we will have a meeting, but please do check the website and the agenda to make sure where it is. Thank you all and have a great night.